everyone, and welcome to a fresh episode of Pairfect, the show that links you up with the best and brightest in our world. I am Dinah Ventura.
And I am Jojo Silvestre. Today we'd like you to meet a man of many talents. He's a theater producer from New York City, a Bachelor of Arts degree holder in broadcast journalism and musical theater, with a Master of Arts in strategic communication from the American University.
He performs in productions throughout Washington metropolitan area and in January 2012 co-founded Latido Productions, currently serving
Wow.
as its executive artistic director.
May we introduce to you Don Michael Mendoza, co-producer of Broadway's newest musical, Here Lies Love. Welcome
Wow,
Hi.
welcome.
Thank
to
you
the
so
show.
much.
Wow, that's the big news now, huh? And David Byrne, do I say Byrne? And Fatboy Slim's disco pop musical about former Philippine First Lady Imelda Marcos. This opened on Broadway on July 20. It made history as the first Broadway musical to tell a Filipino story with an all-Filipino cast and crew and majority Filipino creative and producing teams, including Leia Salonga, our very own, who has been very controversial lately, hip hop star HER and comedian Joe Coy, all of Filipino heritage, as first time co-producers. How did the all Pinoy cast come about? How did you get Joe Coy, HER, do you say HER, and Apple Diap on board as co-producers? Why is it important for you to be part of the show, so of the production? So tell us how it got
Sure.
together,
Yeah.
and how you were able to
Be part of it
yeah,
Yeah.
in the first place.
Yeah.
It's first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so
Okay.
happy to be here. I'm excited to
Yes.
do my 1st Philippine interview ever
Wow.
in my career.
We're so privileged,
this,
Jojo.
You're a
Yeah,
part of
that's
my
right.
first time here. So first time in a media interview, not not in
Oh,
the country.
really?
But
Wow.
in your first question about the Filipino cast,
Yeah.
it was very important to the lead producers. Two of the five who are Filipino, Clint Ramos, who is a Tony Award-winning costume designer, and Jose Antonio Vargas, who is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. The two of them, it was very important that this story be an all-Filipino cast. And I believe our other three producers, Hal Luftig, Diane Dimena, and Patrick Catulo, all share the same view. And even our writers, David Byrne and Fatboy Slim. So that decision was obvious from the start of bringing it to Broadway. But then we, and meaning them, wanted to reach beyond the cast and make sure that really this show is escorted into Broadway by Filipinos because it's a Filipino story. So it goes beyond the cast. So our creative team, our production team, our stagehands, everybody, even house staff, some are Filipino. So we really wanted to make a mark on Broadway. So that's how that came about. So that was kind of an early decision because the off-Broadway production was mixed. It wasn't all Filipino. We had Ruthie Ann Miles as Imelda, and she's not Filipino. And so it was very hard to move from her and bring in Ariel Jacobs, who is just as amazing, but it was very important to the team to have it be culturally accurate because it is our story. So then your second question was, how did I become part of the production?
Yes, yes.
So it was kind of like a serendipitous moment. At the time when I joined the team of Here Lies Love, I had just accomplished producing my first off-Broadway play it's called Hazing You, and it's a story
Okay.
about fraternity hazing and
Oh.
how universities can hopefully be safer about their policies surrounding Greek life because it's still an issue that kids get hurt. So we produced that, my company, we produced it in February of 2023. And so it was in around that time that I heard that Here Lies Love was coming to Broadway.
Okay.
And I had heard of Here Lies Love 10 years ago in 2013 when it was off Broadway. A friend of mine, now my business partner and basically my mentor, said to me at the time, Reggie Gabico, he said, you should go see this show. It's very important. It's a Filipino story. It's immersive. And so I said, sure. And I missed it. and I thought I would never see or hear about that show ever again, just because Filipino things don't usually last very long in America.
In America.
And so, but then I heard it was coming to Broadway. So I did, basically I called everybody I knew, everybody I saw on the team, on the production announcement who was involved, to ask, how can I help, you know, and I wasn't really looking for a producer's stature. You know, I said, and I've said this to many people, I said I was willing to sell T-shirts in the lobby to support this show.
Just be part of it.
And it just so turned out that my very good friend, Laura Nicolas Olaes, who I stay with in New York, she was in the first workshop of the show in 2011.
Okay.
And she knew Clint Ramos personally, or knows him personally. So she connected us via email and said, hey, I think my friend Don Michael would be really good to join the team. And so he called me the final night of my off-Broadway play. So as I was closing an off-Broadway play, we were on the phone, and he said, I really like you. Like, let's talk about you joining the team and how we can move forward. And so he pulled me on. That was February 19th of this year. And so then it was a wild ride from then until now. And so I don't, not that I would, but I don't regret any of it. It's been the best experience so far.
Yeah. But why is it important to you, and what does this production mean to the Philam community in America?
So it's important to me because I said to someone, you know, somebody asked me at Hazing You, they said, do you ever want to reach Broadway and do that level of production? And I said, yeah. And, you know, in terms of manifesting, I said out loud, you know, I would like to put my name on a Broadway show before I turn 40.
Okay.
I'm 34. I'm very honest about my age. And, you know, it happened, you know, and it wasn't just any show. It was the first Filipino musical on Broadway.
It's a very special,
yeah,
very
so it's
significant.
very important to me because a lot of my career is based around the idea of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially in a country like America that's a melting pot. You know, it's very important to make sure that underrepresented voices and communities are brought to the front. And so to be part of that, for me personally, has been such an incredible honor because it's exactly aligned with how I live my professional life every day, every year. To the Philam community, I think it's important for people to see themselves in that arena, whether it be as a producer, whether it be as an actor or a stagehand, or on the creative team as the assistant director. You know, it says a lot when somebody who's trying to reach that can see themselves in a role that they want to achieve. Because for a long time, you know, like my role models were very few. They were mostly American, you know, mostly white people. And, you know, I wanted to be an actor, so one of my only acting influences in the media was Paulo Montalban, who was in Cinderella, and he was I was at American Adobo, who is now a friend, which is amazing. But, you know, I didn't have very many role models. So to our community, both Filipino and Philam, they can now look at this production and say, whatever they feel is their career path, I can do it too. Like, you know, so it's very powerful.
Yeah. I suppose I'm now very curious about Don Mike, about how he began his...
Where are you from originally?
Originally,
You grew up here?
It's a big question. So I feel like I'm from everywhere. So long story short, I was born in Washington, D.C. I was raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I also was raised here in Manila in Ayala, Alabang for a couple of years.
Like what age?
So I was here in the Philippines for that portion of time between 6 and 8 years old. My dad brought me home. I went to Montessori de Manila and BF Homes, and I lived with my grandparents in Alabang. And but my family, we're very lucky that we're able to come home a lot. So even though I grew up a majority in America, we would come home every other year, you know, and then in high school, summers are long, so we'd come home for like a month and a half. And so I feel like I grew up in many places. So I feel like when somebody says, where are you from? I'm like, well, Manila,
everywhere.
Washington, D.C., and Pittsburgh. That's where I'm from. And because I even went back to D.C. for college. So I lived in D.C. for 13 years. So it's
moved
everywhere.
around a lot. Well, tell us about your parents. I mean,
Sure.
Why did they move to the U.S.?
My mom and dad, they met here. They're from here. They fell in love. And so my dad went over first to kind of seek a new life. And
where are they from? Manila?
Where are they from? My dad's family is from Cavite. So Imus, they're from there. My mom's family originally from my mom's family, so my grandmother's family,
Yeah.
Marinduque,
Yes.
and my mom's father, my grandfather's family, Bicol. So
Okay.
from those three places is
Wow.
where I feel I've come from, culturally
Yeah,
speaking.
yeah.
Okay.
But then now they're all in Manila. So um, I lost my train of thought. What were we
Your
talking about?
parents.
So my parents. So my dad, eventually he came to the States, started working there.
Okay.
My mom followed him, and so I was born in the late 80s. And
Oh.
but the background of my families are interesting because my dad's family here was really involved with like local politics
Oh.
in Parañaque
Oh,
and in
really?
Cavite. But
Okay,
like
okay.
my mom's family, her maiden name is Hodriel. So our family, through my grandfather, created what's now known as Easy Rock, but W Rock, the
It
light
was
rock station,
for the
Okay.
longest time.
for a long
Radio,
time. And so
on
my
radio.
grandfather, Kerubin Hodriel, is the one who
Oh,
brought
wow.
that, put that on the map, because I've
Okay.
learned a lot about my grandpa, that he's, I guess his nickname is like the father of broadcasting here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's done a lot. And so I knew him for a very short period of time
Yeah.
when I was very young. And so
Yeah.
my mom is part of that legacy. And so when we came to the States, she says it's interesting all the time that even though we're in America, I still somehow ended up doing what our family does
Yeah.
in
It's in
entertainment
your
and
blood.
media. Right. So
So you've always been in theater all these years?
I want to say by happenstance. So in school, in elementary school, there's school shows, there's all
Yes.
that. And in high school, I did musicals. I was in like the dance
Oh, wow.
ensemble, like because
Yeah.
I thought it was fun at the time.
Yeah.
But then I went to college, and I needed to study something that wasn't the arts, because immigrant families want you to do something that makes money
Okay.
in their eyes. So
Okay.
I studied broadcast journalism and political science, and so
Okay.
after I didn't like poli-sci, I dropped poli-sci and added musical theater.
You
back,
added.
back into my degree, but I didn't tell my parents until I got into the program.
That's funny.
Because I
Okay.
didn't want them to like lord it over me, like, oh, you didn't even get into the program, but I got it. So,
Ah, okay.
Okay,
but that's
okay.
kind of how I ended up.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't think I would be, but that's how I'm in the arts.
Okay,
So,
okay, okay.
Jojo, we'll take a short break.
Okay, okay.
When we return, we'll take a deep dive into Here Lies Love. And in the meantime, let's have a word from our sponsors.
Sponsors.
This break is brought to you by Angkas, Beat the Traffic, Bayad Center, hashtag Bigger Better Younger Bayad, and you can buy it all. Conti's Bake Shop and Restaurant, delightfully yours. Globe, atin ang mundo. Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Smart, live more today. Union Bank, it starts with you. And Tata Consultancy Services. Straight Talk dives deep into present issues of leadership, politics, business, and more. Engage in insightful conversations with industry shakers, government leaders, and trailblazers every Wednesday at 10 a.m. only here on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube. A wellness show dedicated to empowering viewers with the knowledge and inspiration needed to lead a healthy lifestyle. Be Well Now, hosted by Miss Cory Crino, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. only here at Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube.
Arayan at talakayang showbiz, times 2, doble-doble! Kasama ang dalawa sa walang kupas na talakera ng showbiz, Alwin Ignacio at Alex Brosas. DTT Show, tuwing Sabado at Linggo, alas 4 ng hapon, dito lang sa Diario Tirada ng Daily Tribune.
Creative minds, entertainment icons, style influencers. We shine the spotlight on remarkable individuals who shape our cultural landscape. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m., only here in Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube.
And we're back. Before earlier you were talking about your journey in your field. So could you tell us more how you started in this?
Sure. So we were talking about college, and so I finished school. I went to
Yes.
the American University in DC, and I had two goals when I finished school. I either wanted to be a Broadway actor, because I was really inspired by Jose Lana, who plays Ferdinand Marcos in our show.
Oh.
And the other side was I wanted to be the Filipino Anderson Cooper. I wanted to be a broadcast
Oh,
journalist and report wherever and do all
Yeah.
that. But at the time, it was a recession. I was interning for NPR at the time at my university. But there just weren't jobs, and so I wasn't willing to move to a suburb or a smaller state to start my career. So I stayed in DC. I ended up working in marketing instead of journalism, and
Okay.
so I learned that side, which eventually ended up being my master's degree. And then in the theater arts world, I started auditioning. I was, trying to do shows, but I wasn't getting cast the way I wanted to because, it was very hard for a Filipino or not even that, an Asian male actor to get parts unless you decided to be in Miss Saigon, which was like one of the only very few shows that hire Asian people. And so I kind of fell into producing. I met my co-founder of Latido, Reggie Cabico, and he's 20 years older than me, so he's more my mentor and business partner. But he said to me, the way to be successful as someone who looks like us in the arts is to start your own opportunities. So we created Latido, and so we started doing productions of cabarets and concerts, and over from 2012 until this year, so 11 and a half years. I had met so many people and worked with so many actors and performers and was producing without calling it producing because I didn't realize that producing just means organizing. It just means you're in charge and you put things together and you hire people. And so in that decade, I was able to produce small musicals and concerts and special events. And so all of that kind of led to, and then of course there was the pandemic. So then it led
Stopped
to
a
me,
bit.
it stopped. And then in that time I incorporated a new company really for myself called DMH Mendoza Productions. And so Latido sits under that as the cabaret concert arm. And then this new company allows me to produce bigger and more incredible things. So like Hazing You, the off-Broadway play, falls under that. And then that of course led to Here Lies Love.
Here
So-
Lies Love.
But now I still have trouble today saying I'm a producer because I'm so used to just doing rather than labeling myself. So
Okay, it's about
Yeah.
the same thing anyway. But let's go into Here Lies Love. The subject of this musical is a very controversial figure. So, what can you say about that? I mean,
So I will say what my colleagues say about the show, which is it's very on point, is that our show is a musical textbook. It's a show created around facts about what happened historically during her lifetime, and our whole goal for the show is to present to you what happened, of course with entertainment attached to it because it is a musical. There's a
Yeah.
misconception that people are going to come to our show and think it's like a documentary, and it's not. It's musical theater, so it's still supposed to be fun. But then you see what happened, and we empower our audience to leave the show to make their own decision.
okay.
We don't tell them, this was a bad person or this was a good person. We say, here's what this person did in their life and how she was affected by her surroundings, and go home and do the research and you figure it out. We likened it to giving someone a zip file of Philippine history in the 20th century or 21st century, and you have to go home and unzip the zip file and get into the details. But we give you an overview. So it's really up to the audience member how they feel when they leave the show. I know that it's a goal of our writers and our director to not impose an opinion.
Just
on
to
who sees the show.
entertain,
entertain you,
people
and you learn something, and
think.
then yeah, exactly. And then when you leave, it's up to you what
Yeah.
you'd like to decide.
That's good. That's good, right?
You came in after the casting has already been put together.
Mid
Ah,
casting.
So how was it like inviting all these people? and,
Yeah.
to
Well,
join.
Well, I will say, as a co-producer,
Yeah.
my job is very specific. So my job is, our team was brought on because we're meant to raise money
Yes.
for the show. So we do hear of casting. We do, kind of are able to talk with the lead producers and the art creative team about who they're considering. But co-producers are very far from making that decision.
Oh,
So we don't have any influence on that. So really, I was learning about Leia Salonga and learning about
Yeah.
our ensemble as they were announced. So I was just as excited as the general public when we would get those announcements.
yes.
But of course, as a co-producer, we'd hear rumblings of things, but not official until officially out. But I know you asked earlier, how did we get people to join the producing team, like Joe Coy and her,
Right.
and Apple to App? That is a credit to our lead producers, Clint and Jose. Like they, network so well, and they know so many people. And between them and then people on our co-producing team, like I call her Tita Gurley, but Miss Gurley Rodis and Bobby Garcia,
Girlies.
they all together collaborate, and they kind of approach people and ask. And Leia was the first to come on, and then we heard that her was the next one. Her, if we win a Tony, she will be the youngest EGOT ever.
Okay.
Because she'll have all 4. If she wins the Tony, she already has 3.
So that's her. It's not
Yeah,
HER.
It's also HER, but her. And
Easier
then
to say her.
Joe Coy came on, and he had already been promoting the show because he was so excited about Here Lies Love. He had big Here Lies Love screens at all of his shows on the road till before he officially came on. And then Apple Dap was the most recent one to come on. But for them, it seems like what I feel was a natural decision for all of them, because they just wanted to support the community and this production. So I don't think that our leads had a hard time.
Yeah, I
asking
was
them
gonna
to join.
ask. I was wondering if it was hard because of the subject of the musical, but
Right.
apparently no. It's really
Yeah,
just
they
bigger than that.
And speaking to them, I got a chance to speak to Jo Coy and her, but also with Leia. She's on our production calls and team, so I get to speak to her often. It's really the main point is that it's our show. That's why they're here, because it's us. It's our story. It's our show. Let's bring it to the world and to a community that needs to learn about.
It's our
Philippines.
story, and we
Right.
should be proud of it.
Absolutely.
Right.
And the first time our people are playing themselves. I said something to in an interview, and I said, the general public is so trained to love Filipinos as other ethnicities. This
Yeah.
is the first time we're training them to love us as Filipinos, as
I
ourselves.
didn't realize that. I thought,
Because people
You
love
know.
Leia Salonga. Why? Because she played Vietnamese. She
Okay,
played
I see.
Jasmine, Mulan, Chinese,
Yeah.
but never a Filipino till now.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
that's a good, I mean, something to note, right? Because
Yeah,
that's something
Right.
we Filipinos in the Philippines hardly think
Filipinos
about.
are very
that's right.
they're very good at being part of other cultures.
Yeah.
And while we're very proud, it's very hard to find a representation of ourselves
Right.
elsewhere other than here. And so Here Lies Love opens that door. It's saying here's
And-
Filipinos being Filipino.
And how has it been received in Broadway?
Very well. We're very excited. All of our critics have come and they've said really wonderful things about the show, especially the ones that we, were the most nervous about, like the New York Times or the Washington Post or Wall Street Journal, have all come back to us and have said really wonderful things about it. And that, of course, trickles down to everybody else that's seen the show too. But, I think we're very proud and excited that it's well received. Audience members love it. They keep coming back. It's
And the
unseen.
audience is made up mostly of Filipinos, or is it a mix?
It's pretty diverse. We had our assumptions of what it would or wouldn't be, but it really is. You see Filipinos, you see Americans, you see people who are visiting. It's really a big hodgepodge of different people. So we're happy about that too, because it's
Yeah.
not just biased to one community.
How is it different from Evita?
It's very different from.
Very
Evita.
different.
I know a lot of people like to compare the two because obviously strong female lead about
Yes,
politics, all of that.
Yes.
Power.
Power, right? How power affects a person, but it's very different just from the very obvious part that it's a short show. Our show is 90 minutes long. It's an interactive, immersive show. Evita, you sit and watch, and our show at the end, it's I wouldn't say there's a happily ever after. It's a moment to think. So I think while Evita makes you think too, I think ours is it's very clear. The message that we have at the end is about democracy. It's about this is and I will give credit to Leia Salonga for saying this, but she said our offering is it happened to us. how are you going to take this experience and take it to your own communities and your own countries if you're not from the Philippines? And so, yeah.
You know,
Okay.
right after EDSA, there was this song, Handog ng Pilipino sa Mundo,
Sa mundo.
which is our offering to the whole world. So I guess this is another offering.
Right.
Another
exactly.
gift to the world.
Another
Yeah.
gift.
And people are happily accepting our gift, so we're happy about that. It's and
Okay.
the thing is, everybody is just happy to be there. Like our cast is happy to be there. You know, our production team. You know, all that. There's a lot of parts of the vehicle that after you do your job, they like in a normal Broadway show, they leave. Like after a show opens, the director's done. You know,
Yeah.
our assistant director is still doing workshops and talkbacks with people. You
Oh,
know, our producing team. When you're co-producing, you raise your money and that's it.
Yeah.
But we're involved in events, in bringing people to the show and all of that.
That's
So
nice.
there's a continued commitment to keeping the story alive that most shows don't really have.
Yes.
And the cohesiveness that exists.
And I think that's not the only thing that's different about this show. It's very immersive, as you were telling us earlier. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So when you go to a theater, right, you can buy different tiers of tickets. There's orchestra, which is the front, or mezzanine, balcony, rear mezzanine. So what we did in the Broadway Theater, which is, I believe, the second largest theater on Broadway, it had 1,800 seats. So we removed 800 of them, and most of it being on the orchestra on the floor, because we created a dance floor. When Here Lies Love opened off Broadway, it was an immersive. It was a show that took place in a discotheque, and so all the audience was on this floor, and that's why it was immersive. The audience became the crowds of EDSA. They became the mourners at the Aquino funeral. They became the party goers at the club. So we recreated that at the Broadway Theater, just way larger, like 10 times larger. The addition is now we have the floor scene where you can buy tickets there, or if you don't want to be in the action, you can be in what we call courtside seats, which is like gallery on the sides, and you kind of see the show from either side. Or you can be in the mezzanine, which you're more traditional seating, but some people ask, well, that's like being in the back. It's not, because our show truly is immersive in the sense that performances happen all over the theater. We have runways that go up to the mezzanine, so actors will be right in front of you. So for the people on the floor, it's 360 degrees, but if you're in any of the other sections, you're going to have actors come closer to you, go far away, you know, like front mezzanine, which is usually a drop. There's a runway, like Imelda's right in front of you at certain parts of the show. And it happens all over. And then for those that are truly in the back, we have video screens, like a concert. So you don't miss anything, but it's a different experience wherever you sit,
Wow.
which I think is also contributing to why people come back, because they come
They
and see
enjoy
it.
it
In,
so
yeah,
much.
they come and see it in the gallery, and they're like, oh, I really want
I'll
to be
try
down there.
this
Like,
part
or
next
they
time.
come to the mezzanine, they're like, what's that side
Yeah.
like? And so,
That's so nice.
it really is offering different.
A different
ways.
experience.
Right, and it's just truly an experience that you've never seen on Broadway before. And people say that. That's not just me being a producer. Like, people actually are like, it's so different, and they love it. And so they tell their friends or they come back.
Okay, so we should watch that sometime.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have the Filipinos been traveling to
Yes.
just to watch?
We've had a lot of travelers come to New York to see the show.
Just to see the
Just
show,
to see the
right?
show, or
Wow.
they
It's-
add it to their plans. So it's really
Is
interesting.
it hard to get tickets now, or?
Well, I'm not going to say it's hard, but I will say you have to act fast.
Oh.
Tickets are selling very well.
Very well.
And
okay.
so, you know, for anybody watching, Leia is in the show until August 19th. So you have about a week, under a week to catch her before she moves on.
Okay.
But she, you know, we don't know what's next. But her role is more of a guest star role. So, again, like I said earlier, I'm in the dark of who's next
Okay, very
in that role.
exciting.
But when it's announced, it'll be a very awesome, exciting announcement for everybody
I'm
to
sure.
see.
I'm sure.
But the show itself, we have tickets available till January. So I say
Okay.
book fast and book early. But I think the biggest part is bring a group of friends. We have group sales, if 10 or more.
Better prices.
There are
I
discounts
suppose.
for groups. And, you know, we love bringing lots of people to see the show together. So
Okay, so let's get more into that after a few
Yeah,
more
of course.
reminders from our sponsors.
This break is brought to you by Angkas, Beat the Traffic, Bayad Center, hashtag Bigger Better Younger Bayad, and you can buy it all. Conti's Bake Shop and Restaurant, delightfully yours. Globe, atin ang mundo. Meralco, ang liwanag ng bukas. SM, we've got it all for you. Smart, live more today. Union Bank. It starts with you. And Data Consultancy Services. Straight Talk dives deep into present issues of leadership, politics, business, and more. Engage in insightful conversations with industry shakers, government leaders, and trailblazers every Wednesday at 10 a.m. only here on Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube. A wellness show dedicated to empowering viewers with the knowledge and inspiration needed to lead a healthy lifestyle. Be Well Now, hosted by Miss Cory Crino, every Wednesday at 2 p.m. only here at Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube.
Arayan at talakayang showbiz, ×2, doble-doble! Kasama ang dalawa sa walang kupas na talakera ng showbiz, Alwin Ignacio at Alex Brosas. DTT Show, tuwing Sabado at Linggo, alas 4 ng hapon, dito lang sa Diaryo Tirada ng Daily Tribune.
Creative minds, entertainment icons, style influencers. We shine the spotlight on remarkable individuals who shape our cultural landscape. Every Tuesday at 2 p.m., only here in Daily Tribune's Facebook page and Tribune Now in YouTube.
Welcome back to Pairfect. I am Dinah Ventura.
I'm Jojo Silvestre.
And we are here with Don Mike Mendoza, co-producer of Here Lies Love.
So tell us about your favorites when it comes to theater. Who's your favorite
yeah.
actor?
That's really hard.
So many.
There's so many, and also because I respect so many and I work with so many of them, it's hard to pick a favorite. But I would say if we were going to go back a decade where I hadn't worked with anyone yet, and I was just somebody graduating from school, I really admired Jose Lana, and so. Also because my voice teacher was like, study all the things that he does. So I was really watching his work a lot. But he's also from the Virginia, D.C. area. And so I definitely was inspired by his work and kind of I have seen his career grow from being in the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee and, Flower Drum Song and then, his TV roles and now Here Lies Love. So he did work with us with Latido when he was on the King and I tour back in 2014, I think is when that happened. But so I definitely admired him, and I think in terms of shows, again, very hard to pick, but I would say Avenue Q is a big one that I really like. It's if you don't know it, it's like Grown Up Sesame Street. It's
I've seen that.
comedy and. So that, Avenue Q, I'll say, I really like smaller off-Broadway shows too. There was one show called The Evolution of Man, M-A-N-N, because the character's name is Henry Mann. And it is a very sweet show about being in your 30s and trying to survive life. And, when I first heard of the show, I was 30. And so,
Perfect.
4 years later, I'm like, it's a really great show. And then I will say, in terms of classics, Company by Sondheim. I have an interesting relationship with Company because for the longest time I disliked the show. I thought I didn't. It's because I didn't understand it, but now I get it because I'm there, like in life. So Company, it's awesome, and I'm learning to love Sondheim more and more because I feel like I just had a very immature view of that work, and now I'm starting to resonate with it more.
Did you watch Sound of Music when you were a kid?
I did. I watched the movie version first, and then I didn't watch the stage musical until I think after college. The first live version of Sound of Music I watched was the national tour in the States, and that was in 2015, I think, 2015 or 2016, and no, it was definitely like 2016 because I remember when I saw it at the Kennedy Center, Vice President Pence came to see it, and the atmosphere was very charged in the theater. But yeah, I have seen Sound of Music, and I like it. It's not a favorite, but I understand why it's important.
Okay.
Was there any play that inspired you to continue your work in theater?
Plays that inspired me.
Anything that has influenced your decisions?
Sure. I feel like one show that really pushed me to love this industry, and I will say it wasn't live. It was a movie, but the movie version of Chicago the musical.
Okay.
And like when that came out, I watched it all the time, and I was just like enamored by the movie
The
and like
whole
the
thing.
magic.
Yeah.
I've now seen that show live on in a theater, and you know, that I think was the first really kind of show that really inspired me to get involved, however that would be, however
In
that would work out.
theater.
So
Okay, that was the push, the inspiration, right?
Yeah.
What about Philippine theater? What can you say
Philippine
about it?
theater. You know,
Musical theater.
I will say, because we're all Filipino here, you know, we've all been singing since we were children and performing just because it comes naturally to being
Yeah.
Filipino. I would say in the Philippine arts, what I can credit in my kind of growing up as an artist are Filipino movies. You know, living here and seeing like the film marathons on TV. You know, I always said to my mom, I was like, you know, Philippine movies are funny. Everyone just cries all the time and they sing and they cry, and that's the whole movie. And it's like 5 hours long. And so, but even that, you know, I understood that there was a different genre of performing
Yeah.
because of Filipino films, and so I appreciate that more now because you know, it's a point of reference. So, but yeah, I would say movies here.
Do you recall any Filipino movie that you loved?
There's
you enjoyed?
one that I watched all the time. It was the stars were Regine Velasquez and Aga Mulak,
Oh.
and it
oh.
was I think it's called Pangako Sa'yo. I think that's the name.
Okay.
And so I watched that here, I think, for the first time while I was visiting my
Yes.
grandparents. And it was, you know, the first time I saw a show or a movie where it was like, they're the stars, but they're also singing the soundtrack and they're also crying. And it's, you know, it's all that. And so, but that movie, and then more recently in the last, like, maybe 6 or 7 years, what's that? There's a movie called Italy, like Italy.
yeah.
It's with Julina Magdangal.
Yes.
And and I always knew her from like Mara Clara. Like,
Okay.
so I would see that TV show all the time in our house.
Okay.
So that film, and then there's a film with John Lloyd Cruz and Sarah Geronimo, where she's his executive assistant. I forget the name of that. movie.
Okay.
But I just thought it was like the funniest movie I've ever seen, and so I watched that a lot too because their
Okay.
comedy is great between the
It
two
is.
of them.
It is.
So where do you see Broadway going?
You know, Broadway is becoming more interactive, whereas classic musicals are removed. You know, there's a fourth wall. You don't disturb the actors.
Right.
They don't talk to you.
Yeah.
Shows are becoming more interactive and more call and response audience participation, and that can be seen in many shows, not just ours. Ours is truly immersive, but there are other shows like Anne Juliet, Once Upon a One More Time that are currently on Broadway, where there's no fourth wall. Like, and even Six, the musical, these shows feel like concerts. You know, you're encouraged to sing out loud like with them. Like they
Also
talk to the
something
audience.
different.
They elicit a response. So the future of Broadway, while I can't say all in all, I can say specifically that I see more shows like that happening more often, and that's kind of a part of the genre that is growing. But of course, there will always be the want for a Sound of Music or a Light
The
in the Piazza
classics.
or Sondheim.
Yeah.
That Rodgers and Hart, Rodgers and Hammerstein. But I want to say, in terms of new, that is becoming a bigger factor of how shows become popular and are
This
kind of
generation,
competing.
I suppose.
Right? Yeah, because it really clicks into like the you know, social media generation
Right.
of Instagram and instant TikToks and all that. You can even see it in the marketing. Like that's kind of where we're headed, if I had to guess,
Right.
just from what I've seen.
But from a businessman's perspective, is it worthwhile to invest in a Broadway production?
You know, it's sometimes it's a very hard sell. Scientifically and statistically speaking, musicals, people that invest in musicals have the same percentage of getting their money back as people that invest in restaurants. It's 26% is the return on investment. So it's a very uphill sell. But,
Okay.
you know, there is a lot of luck involved. You know, there are shows that are super successful, but they don't recoup. And so people have invested, but they while the show's doing well, they don't get their money back. But then there are shows like Hamilton that recoup multiple times over, and people today are still seeing their return on investment. So, there's one part of talking about investing in musical theater that is a mystery because there's luck. You can't tell how popular a show is going to be. You can only base it off of past earned accolades. Our show was lucky. It had already performed at Off-Broadway and performed in London and in Seattle, and we already had positive feedback from the New York Times, from audience members. So, I will acknowledge that our show had a little bit of a leg up in terms of the critique circle because of that. And it's also because our show did not change from Off-Broadway to Broadway. We changed little things, but the DNA of the show is the same. The structure is the same.
And that helps.
And that
as
helps a
well.
little bit when you're talking about investing in the show because there's evidence. But a lot of shows don't have that. They're not as lucky. So there's a bigger risk. And so, like I said, 1 in 4 shows are worth the investment.
Yeah.
But you find the investors who have faith and they keep coming back, or they say, okay, well, maybe next time. But once you find those people, you hold on to them. You don't let them go.
And I think with a production like Here Lies Love, I think a lot of it will come from just belief in the heritage and the history of
Right.
Philippines, right? Being part of that.
It's a big part of it, just how a friend of mine said this to me. She said she's always so impressed how the Filipino community will jump in to support anything that is Filipino, regardless of what the topic is or who it is. Just if it's Filipino, we're there. Like they all show up.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of our success is that
I think so.
both in America and at home here, Filipinos just want to make this successful. So
Lucky.
Do you see it running for a long time?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
It feels like it will.
Yeah.
I can't tell the future, but based on what's happening right now and seeing seeing the business side of the show, we're doing okay, and we'll see how that goes. But like I said, we've got till January at this point in time.
Yeah.
But of course, trends are showing. We'll
Right.
continue past
I
that.
hope so. We'll pray for that. Anyway, Don, Mike, maybe before we say goodbye this afternoon, would you like to say something to our viewers before we end the show?
Sure. Well, do I look at them or do I talk to you?
Up to you.
No, I would say I'll leave with words that I talk about with what I have to call young people now because I'm no longer a young person because I'm in my mid-30s. But when I talk to people who are looking to be a producer or join the arts or launch their career, what I tell them is they say, what's a piece of advice that you would give us? And I say, well, it's always ask for what you want because the worst that will come back is a no. Like, someone will just say no. And then what I've recently added to that mantra is if somebody says no to you, and I will credit Chris Jenner with this, if somebody says no, you're asking the wrong person. And so you
Move on.
keep asking. Yeah, keep asking for what you want. Keep, and to some degree manifesting. But really it starts with speaking up. Because nobody can read your mind. Nobody can see what's happening in your mind and your heart. So if you express it and you ask, you'll get there. It may not happen in the timing that you want, but it'll happen if you keep pushing. So that's what I'll leave the audience with.
Okay.
Great words, I think.
Yeah.
Jojo.
Thank so much
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Don,
for joining
Mike.
us.
All right, Jo, how about
Well,
you?
we just had a good show
Yes.
with a top celebrity. Yeah.
Yes, we're very, very happy to have you with
Thank
us
you.
in this show, and we hope to hear from you again. Maybe when you come back again, we can have
For sure.
another conversation. But meantime, we'd like to say thank you to all our viewers on Pairfect. We'll see you again next week. Again, I am Dinah Ventura,
I'm Jojo Silvestre.
and this has been Pairfect.
Perfect.